Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I will be talking about Burn Notice, which ran for 7 seasons from 2007 to 2013. We begin the show by meeting Michael Weston, an American spy on a mission in Nigeria. Weston is very good at what he does, and everything on the mission is progressing smoothly, right up until the moment he gets a phone call telling him he's been burned, blacklisted by his employers as an unreliable asset. It is safe to say that things get rather more messy after that. However, Weston manages to get out of the Nigerian situation alive, albeit injured. He ultimately finds himself in his old hometown of Miami, Florida, under the not always tender care of his former girlfriend and former IRA member, Fiona. To say that they have a complicated relationship would be to make a very short story of a very long history. But complicated relationships sums up the kind of people you have to rely on when you're burned, as Weston himself puts it in the show's opening credits monologue. When you're burned, you've got nothing. No cash, no credit, no job history. You're stuck in whatever city they decide to dump you in. You do whatever work comes your way. You rely on anyone who's still talking to you. A trigger happy ex girlfriend, an old friend who used to on you to the FBI, family too if you're desperate. Bottom line, as long as you're burned, you're not going anywhere. So Weston's stuck in Miami without any real job prospects. But his training means he has a wide variety of skills, and he soon puts them to use solving problems for those he meets. More importantly, he's also not the kind of man to take his sudden and unexplained burn notice lying down. The jobs he does don't just keep food on the table and a roof over his head, they give him the opportunity to find out who burned him and learn why they did it. Weston's quest for answers from, and ultimately a reckoning with, the people who burned him form the backbone of the show. Now, any show that gets 7 seasons, more than 100 episodes, and a prequel movie has to be counted as something of a success, and Burn Notice enjoyed both critical and audience acclaim. Critics praised the show's brisk and witty writing, succinct humour, and strong blend of heist movie style capers with dry humour. The show's strong cast certainly didn't hurt. The core group are all great in their roles. I was particularly fond of the interactions between Jeffrey Donovan, who plays Michael Weston, and Sharon Gless, who plays his mother. They have a complex relationship that features fierce familial loyalty and affection, but also considerable mutual disappointment and regrets from the past. And they're both coming from very different life experiences and perspectives. It's well written and well performed, and a lot of fun to see unfold on screen, especially because, of course, Michael is still not being entirely honest with his mother about who he is, what he does, and why he's suddenly back in Miami. Now, given that I watched all 7 seasons of Burn Notice, it's probably no surprise to learn that I was a fan of the program. And I feel comfortable also recommending to anyone who hasn't seen it, albeit with one important caveat. But before we get to that small fly in the show's ointment, let's first unpack a couple of its main strengths. So I became aware of Burn Notice at about the same time as I encountered another show, Leverage. The parallels were immediately obvious. Both programs featured a team of highly skilled experts using their unique skill sets to help ordinary people who'd been targeted by those more powerful than them. While Leverage has a great cast, excellent characters, and wonderful dialogue, I quickly became a much bigger fan of this show. Burn Notice might not have quite anything to match the Hardison Parker dynamic of the other program, but it's strong in all of the same areas as Leverage was, and it does a much better job at actually being a heist hijinks show. Leverage's writers seem much more interested in having their admittedly charming cast just play their roles to the hilt and frequently showed little care for the specifics of how the characters actually got things done. Plenty of times I found my enjoyment undercut by implausible handwave schemes or cheap narrative tricks. One example of the latter that cropped up several times was the show the caper apparently going wrong, only to do a flashback revealing that it was all part of the plan. Um, which, that has rapidly diminishing returns. It got to the point where I never believed a setback was actually a setback. In Burn Notice, when something goes wrong, and something usually does, the team have to scramble to get the job back on track. They pretty much always succeed in doing so, of course. They're very good at this after all. But it's much more satisfying to see them actually forced to adapt, throw out the plan they had and improvise a new one, than to just have the show shrug it off as, oh, well, things going wrong was all part of the plan to begin with. Another strength of Burn Notice was that threaded into all of these satisfying episode by episode capers, we had the long term thread of Michael Weston's quest to find and confront the people who burned him. These longer form mysteries can often be difficult for shows to balance. You've got to provide enough answers as the genuine sense of progress, while introducing enough new questions that the plot doesn't seem to get played out, but you also have to avoid piling on so many twists and turns that the whole thing collapses under its own weight. Many shows fumble this, Lost being perhaps one of the most obvious candidates for most people. I know plenty of people did stick around for the long haul with that program, but I checked out at the end of season two because it seemed to me that the writers had no real long term plan, or just kind of flailing around and spinning their wheels until they were told to finally wrap it up. With Burn Notice, however, that main thread evolves meaningfully and effectively, with Michael's progress, setbacks, and complications that ensue all feeling well planned and executed, and there's a real sense of progress to a point for 4 seasons. Because, like a lot of programs, I think Burn Notice may have stuck around a little longer than it should have. Early in season five, things do start to feel a little bit overstretched, a feeling that frankly becomes stronger as we head into season six. The writing team seem to recognize this with a change of direction for the seventh and final series. I think this comes too late to be convincing. More needed to be done in earlier seasons to lay the groundwork for the change. And the execution also leaves something to be desired. They have Michael go into deep cover that means he must avoid his known associates. That's a problem because a huge part of the show's appeal is the camaraderie and interaction between Michael and the other core cast members. Now, don't get me wrong, the seasons 5 to 7 they're okay, they're solid TV. They're just not as good as what went before. Fortunately, the final episode of season 4 actually makes for a pretty satisfying grand finale, and that, honestly, is probably my recommendation. You should definitely watch the first 4 seasons of Burn Notice. As for the rest of it, probably only stick around if you really desperately love the program and don't want to say goodbye to the characters. Just accept that it's never going to be quite as good as it once was. Next time, despite its title, the 1972 offering Piranha Piranha is not a film about killer fish. Perhaps if it was, it would have been more entertaining. But that is for next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've seen Burn Notice, let me know what you thought of it.